Good morning. Happy Monday. It's Daryl here. It's 6 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. I'm running a little late today. I did a few videos that I just did not like and I had to start over. I usually just wait. With me, it's similar to painting. If I try to force something, it comes out terrible. It needs to be from my heart. Yeah, I need to feel it. I need to feel the creative drive for it. So anyway, I'm just gonna roll with this. I was halfway into my workout and I felt it and I got an idea. Um, okay, I want to talk about the protests and Trump's response to them and how I see it evolve. Okay, when these protests first broke out, it was if you could think of one or two words to describe me personally, to describe the protests and the feeling across the country, would be frustration. Um, Frustration. That would be the key word. Now, I think as this evolves, you start to see this protest, this movement evolve and change. You start to see other people using it for other purposes. You see people try to classify the people that are involved in it. I don't know if, I think this might just be human nature to understand and classify and, pigeonhole something to better understand it. It's like, okay, this is this, and this is who is doing it, and this is how I feel about it. Okay. I think it's almost human nature to do that. How this came to my head was just this morning on Facebook. I posted, I'm 100% in support of the protests. That was it, exact words. Within seconds, I got a comment back with a question: Are protests or riots? That was the question. I didn't know how to answer that. To me, it's one movement that had that was spurred on by frustration, years of frustration, and with the Floyd murder being the catalyst, the straw that broke the camel's back to me. And I think as it evolves, there's always going to be impure people or people that use things for their own nefarious purposes. Because now we hear a lot of stuff about far right, far left, far right. I hear a lot of stories about. There was they were looking at, I heard this one report about license plates from different states like Nebraska, and some of the more, I don't know, I would assume Trump leaning states uh, being going into the Minneapolis area. I don't know how true this is. That's another problem, I think, as something like this evolves. It turns from something that's from the heart, the frustration, the need to stop being ignored, and sometimes it gets hijacked. It gets classified here and there, and it runs out of steam. It gets dirtied. I guess I know I'll probably be taken to task for using that, but it gets fouled up, polluted with other stuff, impure. I know. I don't know if that makes sense to some of you, but that's how I best describe it. Now, let me talk about, as an example, how Trump is responding to this. I don't want to beat him up. I just want to point some stuff out. Throughout these 3 or 4 years of his presidency, he's always responded to any crisis by blaming other people. And like I said, this is just a fact. Um, it's always somebody else's fault. And usually, in my eyes, he takes advantage of these situations to. It always ends up being the fault of something to do with his enemies, with the people he perceives as enemies, usually the deep state or the Democrats or liberals or whatever, and he finds a way to blend it in and make it part of, like, he's fighting a war against them. He seems to really misunderstand, like with this. So his latest reaction yesterday was to outlaw the group, the Antifa, anti-fascism group, and I'm going to have to call it that from now on because I'm still learning with this with YouTube and words I can say and cannot say if I want to stay monetized and all that, and I'm not sure about that one. So I'm going to call it the anti-fascist movement. And that was his response yesterday, to classify them as a terrorist organization. A lot of people feel that he should address the nation. My personal feeling is a good president would try to empathize, go on TV and try to understand. And like I said in yesterday's video, just sit down, try to sit down and talk with people, because I think that's one of the that's what I think that's the desire, the point of a lot of these protests are to be heard. And instead, he's responded with just terribly opposite reactions, with this ominous weapons, vicious dogs, just the absolute wrong thing to say. So he uses this term anti-fascist, and I don't know if this is just how his mind works, that that maybe he tries to classify this, and by doing this, it's an insult to the people that are trying to make a point of being heard. It's not just the memory, in my opinion, it's not just the memory of George Floyd, but it's the whole circumstances surrounding what happened and keeps happening and happens, and for a lot of people happens on a daily basis. That, to me, my understanding, the way I see this is that is what these protests are about. Not just in honor of George Floyd, which is nice and everything, but to make his death count for a reason, for change, to be heard. Now, by responding by passing some laws about anti-fascism, just to me, it totally, it's so off target. It misses the whole point here. To me, it's just something that could be used to prosecute people that are doing things he doesn't like. So, back to the question, when I was asked, do you support the protests? I said I'm 100% in support of the protests. And the question was, are you supporting the riots or the protests? And to me, to be honest, it seemed like a silly question. I'm in support of the protests. And like I was just saying, there's different faces, different facades. People go into this for different reasons. Not all of them good. I'm in support of the protests. Along with that, sometimes the anger boils over, and I guess that what would be classified as a riot. And then along that line, people hijack that, and it turns into looting. It's different ways of expressing anger, is the way I see it. And then sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes it's just people taking advantage of a situation. Like I said, when I was asked that question, are you in support of the protests or the riots? Like I said, I just responded with a simple yes. And then I almost feel like people are trying to pigeonhole me, to get me to put words in my mouth. And that happened in a few comments here on YouTube, where all of a sudden somebody was saying that something about masks and the riots that I support. And I know I never said I support riots. And it feels like an attempt, when I get responses and questions like that, it's an attempt to try to pigeonhole me into saying something, to putting words in my mouth. I'm in support of the protests. I understand the anger. I understand the frustration. I definitely understand it. And I think it's been a long time coming. Let me talk about one more thing. Here in Connecticut yesterday, there was quite a few protests, and almost all of them were peaceful. Here in Connecticut, the tactic was to block highways peacefully. And see, Connecticut is more or less the doorway to New England with I-95, 91, Route 8. They all run basically from the bigger cities to the south, New York, Washington, all the way down to Florida, those cities, and across the country. And you pretty much, the main path is through our little state. And the highways here, it's a very small state, but the highways are very essential here to go up north to Boston, Canada, to all points north. So some of these, as a form of protest, instead of looting, they blocked the highways yesterday here for a while. And I heard the protesters talking about, and it's a form of impacting the economy here too, making people listen, because a lot of the goods are transferred on the highways. So by slowing it down and stopping them for a while, it forces people to hear your opinion, to hear your frustration. It's kind of like a better, more efficient way. I don't know if I should say this, but of looting, because looting impacts the businesses, the economy. The frustration, it's an impact, a direct impact, not good. But by blocking the highways, it makes people have to listen. It makes commerce and the economy stop, so that these concerns, these valid concerns, could be heard. And I applaud that. One last thing, I saw other comments, a lot of times from Trump supporters, that they say they don't watch the news, or they don't watch anything but Fox News because they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear all the bad news or the fake news. And a lot of these people probably get caught on the highway, and they're the ones complaining because they can't get to the beach or to their nail salons that are opening up today or whatever. Or yesterday, they couldn't get to where they were going because they didn't know about these protests, and they didn't understand what would probably happen. And it just builds more into their frustration and their anger at the protests and everything that's going on, is they don't understand it. By not watching the news or just watching the propaganda spin of it, they're not aware of what's probably going to happen. They probably should be taking maybe a different route, a secondary road, if you were going to travel yesterday, because it was without a doubt, so the major highways were going to be shut down for a short time yesterday. And if you were aware and you watched the news, and not just Fox News, you would have known this. But a lot of these people refuse to hear it. And as a result, they get caught in these traffic jams, and their anger grows and frustration goes. They go back home, they watch more Fox News, and at least that's my take on it. All right, I'll be back in a while with some more stuff. You guys have a good Monday.